Welcome to the OIC, otherwise known as the Omnipresent Information Connection podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Peterson.
And I'm the co-host, Noah Hansen. The Omnipresent Information Connection podcast is all about your world and your unique walk on this path called life. We present fascinating, life-changing information from around the world that has been validated. We also authenticate the information by providing you with links to where you can find out more about what we are talking about on our show. This podcast includes historically accurate, genuine facts that have helped shape our daily lives into what they are today. We've got a very special episode for you listeners today on fate and destiny, but we're going to talk about much more than just fate and destiny. We're going to talk about the HeartMath Institute's take on the intelligence of the heart and how our heart is actually intuitively more capable than we originally thought. Originally, we thought it was a blood pump, but we're now discovering, and we'll present you in this episode, that it's much more than a blood pump, actually. On top of that, we've got some more scientific studies to present to you in this episode, and then we're going to talk about what fate and destiny actually are. We're going to talk about the role that it plays in our lives, and we're going to talk a little bit about free will as well. So, Kevin, I hope that you are just as inspired about the topic of today's podcast than I am. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I can tell that this can be an exciting podcast. You've got a lot of valuable information to be able to give to us.
That's right. So I don't know if you want to open with anything, but I can jump right into HeartMath if you'd like me to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so Roland McCready is the director of research at HeartMath Institute, and you can find their website in the link in the description below. Roland McCready is a professor at Florida Atlantic University, and he discovered that there were heart rate statistics that predicted two distinct types of events 2 to 14 seconds before the events actually happened. And these two events were, the first one was emotionally arousing or neutral photographs that were presented, the heart rate statistics, the heart rate variability. It would actually switch as if in response to these pictures being presented before the pictures were given to the person. And their heart, it's amazing. It's absolutely mind-boggling because their hearts would react either in an emotionally neutral way if it was an emotionally neutral photograph that was presented, or they would act 2 to 14 seconds, their hearts, that is, would react 2 to 14 seconds before an emotionally arousing photo was presented in response to that arousing emotion, as if it were being presented to them before the actual presentation. And it's like our hearts have some sort of deeper knowledge of what's going to come before it actually happens. The second study was done with a roulette game, and they would actually be able to predict if they were going to win or lose in this roulette game based on the changes in their heart rate. So that shows the intense emotional intelligence of our heart is able to actually predict things outside of us before they actually happen. What do you make of this, Kevin? How do we deal with this information? What does this mean?
Well, our heart is the core of our body, and because of that, it is the soul's element of communication. And the heart not only just helps pump blood and to be able to keep things circulating, but it also is one of the most kind of mysterious muscles that we have in our body that is tuned in to energies in our environment. And because of that, our hearts then respond in kind to the environment that we're in.
Yeah, and what HeartMath Institute is proving with their research, especially Roland McCready's, is that this heart really does respond to the energies surrounding us, and it's amazing. Another discovery that was made by HeartMath Institute is that our hearts actually generate an electromagnetic field that could span out upwards of 50 feet even, and at HeartMath Institute, they have read this electromagnetic field. They can pick up with their tools the electromagnetic field that your heart is generating, and it's like 8 feet outside the body, I believe it was. It was somewhere around 8 feet that they could actually still detect that electromagnetic field. So that's pretty amazing, and it also means that our electromagnetic fields are communicating with each other as we speak right now, less than 8 feet away from each other. And it's pretty amazing because that is what it seems to me is that energy field is what is taking in that information that is going to occur. It's taking in that prediction of what image is going to be presented to these people. It's taking in the outcome of this roulette game in that electromagnetic field.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's where the whole, and not many people think about this, but have you heard of the 5-foot rule?
No, I haven't heard of the 5-foot rule.
Okay, when you're being in customer service, is that between you and the customer, there needs to be at least a 5-foot rule. And what that means is that a arm's length away from the person so that you're not getting into their bubble, into their space, right?
Right, if you both had your arms out, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the reason for that is that that's where your natural comfort zone lies, is within that 5-foot space or diameter. And in that space, you can be able to literally pick up and sense and see things through the naked eye that you couldn't if you were farther away.
Sure. I'm a ad-heart facilitator for HeartMath Institute. I have that credential to be able to speak about what they do. So I just want to present another experiment that's really amazing that HeartMath did. And what they do is they train people in heart-brain coherence, which is a state of mind and body where you're able to be more in tune with what's going on around you and be in tune with your body. And it actually one of the steps in this teaching that they do is to actually consciously muster up in yourself a positive emotion. And heart-brain coherence is the outcome of these positive emotions that people are feeling. When you have a positive emotion that is directly lined up with heart-brain coherence, or at least more heart-brain coherence. When you have positive emotions, it's almost like a more healthy state of our entire body. And they've done research on that, and one of the things that they did is they put 2 people who were trained at a table, right? And then they would have one person who's not trained in this positive emotion, heart-brain coherence. And what happened was when they gave the hidden signal to those 2 people that were trained in heart-brain coherence to start doing the activity or the training where they are becoming more heart-brain coherent at will, then the third person at the table, who also had like a heart monitor or heart rate variability reader, they became more heart-brain coherent when those 2 people had activated that training. So it seems like our electromagnetic fields that our hearts are generating actually will influence the electromagnetic fields of people around us and influence the heart rate variability and the heart-brain coherence of the third person that was sitting at the table that was not trained.
Wow, now that's really valuable information. Obviously, I've been aware of bits and pieces of parts of what you've been learning over the last year, and that just really helped put the puzzle pieces together in a very intelligent way and very insightful. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's an amazing discovery, and I think it's going to change a lot of things when people start to really understand this in secular culture. That it's more than... you can't just keep emotions in and expect them not to affect people. No matter how heart-brain coherent or how not heart-brain coherent you're affecting the people surrounding you with your electromagnetic field.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's pretty amazing. Now, having to do with fate, the reason I brought that first experiment up is because it seems like our hearts know our fate, at least in the immediate future, at least 2 to 14 seconds in the immediate future, our hearts can predict what's going to occur.
Yeah, it's almost as if though our heart actually has an all-seeing eye.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. But what it is that it's our natural God-given instinct being able to then be edified through the frequency that our heart gives out in its environment. And so I've known magicians, I've known very astute people be able to have people blindfolded and be able to then be handed a book. And just by the mere giving of that book to someone else, that they knew that it was either going to be a positive book or a negative book based upon the energy that it was provided in the giving.
Wow. So you wonder if they're picking up on the energy of the person giving it to them, or they're picking up on the energy of the book itself and the information contained in it.
Both.
I'm one to believe that everything has an energy, a frequency to it that could be more positive or more negative, depending on what that item is. Mm-hmm. For example, if you were to give someone a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, that would have a different energy signature that could be picked up by your subtle body, by your heart, versus the Bible, the Holy Bible. Mm-hmm. Those would have two separate energies. And why this is because of the energy that Hitler had poured into that book. Why this is because all the energy that's poured into the Bible. All the energy is sort of leaving a stamp on these material objects.
Well, right, and you have to understand that resonating energy resides within everything that is touched.
Right. Energy doesn't be destroyed or be created. It transforms.
Well, right, but more importantly is that I'm sure that you've seen somewhere on TV, on a video, something to where you can place your hand on a wall and then remove your hand and to be able to see the heat signature, right?
Right.
In order for you to be able to see that on camera is to be able to see the energy radiating from the surface of what you just did as an action.
And what you're saying is there's more than just heat as far as energy that's left there. It's more than just heat, because heat is energy.
Right.
But in that energy, in that heat, you have all sorts of things that could be put in there.
Yeah, and it's what's called in our industry residual energy.
And we know by our focus, by our conscious focus, that energy is heightened the more focus you place on something. So if I'm focusing on touching this wall and transferring as much negativity into it as I possibly can, every dark thought, every single nasty thing I can think of, then that's going to leave a different energy signature residual when I take my hand off than if I were to pour all the positivity and blessings that I could in that one hand touch.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing. And I think this is what the new science is pointing to. And I think that we're really going to be learning a lot in the near future about these types of studies.
Absolutely. And this is so on point because I had researched last week that criminologists that deal with fingerprints and heat signatures and the like, it's becoming more of a science in the natural element of investigations now, to where they can be able to literally see not only the energy, not only see the handprint, but to be able to now start to be able to see the actual images that are left behind at a crime scene.
What do you mean by that?
So let's say, for an example, that you are pushed up against a wall, and you're basically protecting yourself, right?
Sure.
They have cameras now. They have technology now to where they can be able to, through infrared, be able to see if what your story is resonating by being able to scan the wall to be able to see if your heat signature, any piece of it is still left remaining, where your hands might have been, where your head would have been, and it stays there, but we don't know for how long.
Sure.
And so if your body language, if your energy can be able to be transferred onto a wall, where else do you think it could be transferred to?
Right, other people.
Other people, right?
For sure.
And so it's important to be able to know that you have a very complex element within you that can be doing many of great things or many of bad things, right?
It's an amazing new science because what we're discovering is we are a lot more powerful than we originally thought. We're not just a conglomerate of cells that have built up this material body. We actually are a pulsing, energetic, radiating electric body on top of that. That whether this body is generating it or our soul is generating it, that's still up for interpretation, I think. But I believe it is the soul in the body that's generating that electricity. I mean, your body, once the soul leaves it, no longer has those electrical impulses. So that's where I would point to make the case for the soul being the electric body, whereas the material cellular body is just there as a shell.
Yeah, and the last point that I want to be able to make is that investigators are now able to use infrared in a court of law because I don't know if you've ever done this, Noah, but if you were to be able to place your hand on a wall and then see through infrared, your heat signature, everyone's heat signature is unique. That there's going to be bits and pieces in your hand signature that are going to be hotter or colder that is uniquely, just like a fingerprint,
right?
Uniquely yours, right?
Right. Everyone's palm has different lines in it, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, therefore, since you've got all these different lines in your palm, you also have different heat signatures within your hand.
Right.
Same thing with your arm, with your back, the same thing.
That makes sense. It's all very subtle.
Mm-hmm. But it's all being brought now into evidence as factual evidence that you were actually there at the scene of a crime.
Wow. All right. So what does all this have to do with fate? Let's move on to fate and destiny, because I know that this is all very interesting. Our heart may be able to predict our fates. But what even is the difference between fate and destiny? Why are we naming this episode both of those things instead of just one?
Because you can't have one without the other. It's just a natural law of the universe. Fate and destiny. Destiny, no matter what you try to do to be able to manipulate or change it, it is unchangeable.
Okay, so destiny is rock solid.
Destiny is rock solid. It's something that you cannot change because of who you are. Okay? So now fate is the thing that's often at times altered by your state of mind, state of being.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to slam my hand against this wall, eventually my hand's going to get bruised if I keep on doing it. That's me controlling my own future outcome.
Yeah, your repetitive fate. Yes.
And if I were to walk into a place where I know there's a bunch of poison ivy, I'm choosing the fate of having poison ivy.
Correct.
So is fate completely manifested by our own choices, or is fate controlled completely by us, or is fate more like relating to destiny, where it's sort of you and I would believe chosen by God,
right,
for us, or is fate chosen completely by us?
Right. When it comes to fate, is that we have a hand in it, but only just a hand. Mm-hmm. In order to be fully embodied by fate is that you would have to be outside of your body to be able to then control that outcome. Bring full circle, fate is something that is constantly altered, constantly changing, constantly directed one way or another, but it can only be controlled to a certain limit within the human consciousness of who we are.
So it seems to me by what we've just said, that fate is something that can either hinder us or slow down our ultimate destiny, us reaching that destiny, or it can propel us towards our destiny.
Yeah, to be able to keep it really simple is that your thoughts control your fate.
So we have multiple fates.
Absolutely, but only one destiny.
Right, we are fated for multiple things, but we are destined for one as a whole.
Absolutely. Now, getting into this, the question, what does the Bible say about fate and destiny? It's very complex. This is a very complex issue, and we will start with what the Bible does not teach. Fate is usually, but not always, thought of as predetermined course of events beyond human control. A typical response to a belief in fate is resignation. If we can't change destiny, then why even try? Whatever happens, happens, and we can't do anything about it. This is called fatalism, and it is not biblical. Fatalism is a major premise of Islam, which demands total submission to the sovereignty of Allah. It is widely held in Hinduism, too. In fact, it is a fatalistic view of life that helps keep India castle system in place. Greek mythology told of the Emori, or the Fates, three goddesses pictured as weavers of men's lives. Their decisions could not be canceled or annulled even by other gods. Again, fatalism is not a biblical concept. Okay?
Okay, so what we just said, though, is our destiny is pointed out in the Bible as, a whole for our human race. Either, the sheep and the goats, in Revelations, they're both destined to one or the other. But our fates would determine which one or the other we end up at. Is that lined up with what you believe?
Well, yeah, because that you can only do so much in one direction, right?
Right, and if you choose to hinder your destiny for so long, you can actually separate yourself from that destiny entirely.
Right, but if you are omnidirectional in your approach to fate versus destiny, you could be able to have many different layers of fate heading to your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
You could accomplish multiple different outcomes leading up to one destiny.
Gotcha. So if it is set in stone, though, that's fatalism. Is that what that's saying?
No. Fatalism is when you take God out of the equation, when you think, feel, and believe that only you can control fate, right?
Sure.
And that no matter how you try to be able to change or alter it, that destiny will always be destiny, and so why even try?
Gotcha.
Okay?
Right.
So it's a defeatist mindset of what fatalism is, right?
Right.
But what's God's view on fate and destiny, right?
Well, that's another topic that we wanted to talk about is free will.
Right. And this theme of being held accountable for our choices continues throughout Scripture. He who sows wickedness reaps trouble. Proverbs 22:8. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Proverbs 14:23. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and he will commend you. Romans 13:3. Okay? Often when the Bible speaks of destiny, it's in reference to a destiny people have brought upon themselves. Many live as enemies to the cross of Christ. Their destiny is destruction. Philippians 3:18 and 19. This is the fate of those who trust in themselves. Psalms 49:13. A man who commits adultery lacks judgment. Whoever does so destroys himself. Proverbs 6:32. Each person was judged accordingly to what he had done. Revelations 20:13. And we sin because we choose to. We can't blame fate, kismet, predestination, or God. James 1:13 and 14 says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when his own evil desire he is dragged away and enticed.
Very interesting. So that's showing that pretty much every decision that we make is pointing towards one destiny or another.
It's either fate or fatal.
right.
to our final destiny.
Right. It's either hindering us or propelling us towards it.
Correct.
So I just want to, before we run out of time here, I want to bring up one more discovery on free will that you can actually find a link in the description below and watch the entire length video on where they do multiple experiments and they talk about theology and science and they talk to neurologists in this video. It's very informative and you can see the experiments done right in front of you. And one of the experiments that I want to point out in this video that they did, and you can see it right on camera, is they hooked someone up to an EEG machine. Well, actually, they implanted an EEG machine in this woman's brain so that it can pick up the signals without having to go through the barrier of the skull or the skin or the hair. And they can just get immediate feedback of what's going on in the brain signals, in the brain electrical pulses that are going on. And what they did is they had just a very simple experiment done where there was two buttons in front of them or two points in front of them. And what they would do is they would have her point to one or the other, or she might have just been lifting up one or the other hand. And what they did is while she did this, they had this EEG machine implanted in her brain to get the immediate feedback of what was going on. And they had someone in front of this test subject, and this person was trying to predict if she was going to raise her right hand or her left hand based on the feedback, the immediate feedback that they were getting, and you could see from the EEG machine in her brain right on a screen in front of him. Now, she couldn't see this screen. He could see it. And what happened was this monitor would either show a right arrow or a left arrow, which would represent two different readings in her brain, two different impulses that are going on in her brain right before she raised her hand. And what they discovered was the brain will actually react when she makes the decision to raise her right or her left hand. Your brain will actually react to that, and it will know which one you are going to raise before you actually raise your hand. So this guy was able to predict which hand she was going to raise just based on the right or the left arrow being represented on the screen for the EEG machine in her brain.
And that's really powerful information that you're sharing with us today. And I want you to be able to understand is that the information that we are sharing today isn't really talked about, isn't really mainstream. And the reason for it being is that some people feel uncomfortable knowing that there's other elements that are controlling them. But here, Noah and I, in a new way, are being able to bring forth this information in a way that is comforting, pleasing, and satisfactory through authenticity of not only these studies, not only this research, but the people as well.
So one thing I wanted to point out before we close up here, because we're getting down to 30 minutes, is that our hearts can predict events, it seems, before they occur, 2 to 14 seconds at least, before they actually happen.
I agree.
And now our brains, a split second before an event happens, before we make a decision, our brains will actually predict which decision is going to be made. And this is all relating to quantum physics. If you want to see the subtleties, the subatomic representation of what's going on, you can actually learn about quantum physics, and you'll see this all lines up. And it makes sense when you take quantum physics into consideration too. Now, what if you could tune into your heart so much that you actually can register, you can actually consciously understand what your heart is picking up in that electromagnetic field? What if you could tune into your heart and your brain so much that you knew what was going to happen before it happened?
You would literally be able to start manifesting in a positive way things that you would have normally had to physically do just by thought alone.
Have you ever had an instance where you thought of someone, someone popped into your head, and then they ended up calling you?
Yes, and it happens frequently.
It happens
because
frequently.
Of the frequency of my thoughts.
And that's not even right outside of us. I mean, the phone's there, but that person could be miles and miles away.
Absolutely.
And so this intuitive guidance, this intuitive understanding that our hearts have, I think is very powerful. It could span not only, the distance of the air between us, but also time and space itself. It could transcend that.
Absolutely. And I'm sure most of our listeners have been able to see or at least hear about echo sonification as far as projecting sound into the earth to be able to see, what may lie below the earth.
Right. Look up the Bosnian pyramids.
Right. So if we can be able to do that with the technology that we have, if we can be able to unlock with our own free will this ability to be able to be on the right frequency, we can start to then be able to unlock the hidden mysteries of who we are today.
Right, and the hidden mysteries of what's going on in these ancient pyramid structures that we previously didn't know that the Bosnian pyramids were even pyramids and had chambers going down into it.
Absolutely. And I can't wait for that particular episode to where we can tell more about that.
That's right. I can't wait to visit them. So until next time, listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we would direct you to our Patreon if you were inspired and think that this podcast is inspirational, and you think that what we do here at A New Way and the OIC podcast is inspirational. We have a Patreon where you can actually contribute to our cause and see our mission and vision in greater depth. If you know anyone that could benefit or would be interested in hearing this information, please don't hesitate to like and share our material with those people, because we are not sharing it for our own gains. We're sharing it to just get this powerful information out that we think could change the world forever and should be changing the world a lot quicker than it currently is right now. I mean, we need textbooks. We need the stuff in the textbooks.
Absolutely. And most importantly, what resonates with you resonates with those people that love you too.
Hallelujah. Thanks for listening.
This has been another life-enhancing, authenticated podcast aired by the OIC and brought to you by the faithful OIC sponsors and contributors. Please tune in every week and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, explore our website with all the posts, videos, and podcasts that we have created with you in mind. While you're on the journey through our website, you will see our Patreon page where you can become a faithful contributor yourself with the freedom to be a part of our team today. Thank you.